Yesterday, the Prime Minister announced a new migrant pilot scheme at a joint press conference with French President Emmanuel Macron to come into force in just a matter of weeks, apparently, in response to over 20,000 small boat migrants crossing on UK shores this year.
New data from the Office for National Statistics shows net migration levels reached a record high of 906,000 in the Tories' penultimate year in power. So, is Sir Keir Starmer fixing the problems created by the Conservatives? Well, joining us now is Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. You've been quoted as saying that you think the Tories made a catastrophic mistake in terms of immigration and migration. So presumably you do think the Conservatives caused this problem?
Well, there's two different issues, legal migration and then illegal. On the legal side, yes, the numbers got far, far too high 2 or 3 years ago. That should never have happened. And Kemi and I have been very clear in saying that was a mistake. Now, some policy changes were made late in the Conservative...
Sorry, just to tackle the two issues as you split them, what was the mistake there?
So on legal migration, which is what I'm currently talking about, I'm sure we'll move on to illegal in a minute, the legal numbers were just far too high in about 2022.
But, sorry,
they were much higher
that's
levels than they should have been.
So it was set too high, or was it the fact of allowing under Boris Johnson, you know, different sorts of reasons for people to come here legally?
It's the second of those things. The way the rules were set were essentially too permissive. It allowed too many people to come in. Now, some changes were made late in our time in government, which means that since then, the numbers have halved. But frankly, they are still too high legally. So what we have now proposed, I'm a new Shadow Home Secretary, we've got a new leader, and our new policy is to have a binding cap, a binding annual cap set by Parliament at a far, far lower level even than we're seeing at the moment. So never again can we see these numbers suddenly be far higher than anyone expected, because mass low-skilled migration is actually bad for the economy and bad for society. We can't ever let that happen again. When we put this new plan to a vote in Parliament a few weeks ago, Labour voted against it.
OK. Right. So, I mean, setting levels of numbers lower, the Conservative governments don't have a great track record on, do they? Going back to David Cameron, you know, the numbers always exceed. And your decision to do this and effectively reduce the legal routes is exactly the opposite of what groups that are trying to stop the illegal crossing say is necessary. That having legal routes where people come to provide a service, if gaps in our economy, whatever argument you might put, to have people here is the way to stop the dangerous and illegal crossings. So what's the plan?
Well, that's, I think, nonsense for two reasons. So, firstly, on the filling the gaps in the economy point...
So the refugee groups and the groups that are talking about the need in the economy, they're literally talking nonsense.
They are, and I'll tell you there's two reasons why. Firstly, we have 9.4 million people in this country of working age who are economically inactive. Now, some of those are studying or have caring responsibilities or are genuinely unable to work for health reasons. But we estimate about half of those, so somewhere in the region of 4.5 million people of working age could be working, and we should be getting them into economic activity instead of importing vast numbers of low-skilled, low-wage workers from overseas. That's the first point. Now, the second point is these charities often claim, oh, if you have safe and legal routes, then you won't have any small boats. Now, that is nonsense, because only if you allow every single person, every single one who wants to come into the UK to come into the UK, only then would there be no point in taking a boat. As soon as you have a limit, and obviously there are literally millions of people who want to come into the UK, so unless you're willing to let all of them in legally, then the ones who you don't let in are still going to be using small boats. So their argument, I'm afraid, for those two reasons, is complete nonsense.
Some would say, but perhaps not. If they knew there was a legal route, they would not risk their lives and spend tens of thousands of pounds on smugglers. They will simply make an application. But can I just say, hang on. But
if the success rate of that application is only like 5%, the other 95% of people who want to come here but can't do so on a safe legal route, they're still going to want to get in illegally.
But can I just raise, you're calling the refugee groups what they say is nonsense. The very people who work on our borders, Border Force, are you going to say they're nonsense too? Because what they have overwhelmingly voted for via their union or agreed with their union, the Public and Commercial Services Union, has said that the only way to solve this, and bear in mind, these are the people on the ground, on the waters, trying to protect our borders, they're saying the only way are safe and legal routes. They're calling for a scheme very similar to the Ukrainian scheme. Are you saying that the people that we want to implement our strategy are also speaking nonsense?
Well, look, the Ukrainian scheme, of course, was set up by the last Conservative government. And, of course, where people are in genuine need, like Ukraine, there were some from Afghanistan, some from Syria and some from Hong Kong as well in different schemes, all of which the last Conservative government set up. Where people are in genuine need, yes, of course, we should help them. But it's just common sense, isn't it?
Hang on. So on that, then, you interrupted me, I'll interrupt you. So on that, then, people in Syria are in genuine need. People in Afghanistan are in genuine need. People across war-torn countries in Africa are in genuine need. In Iraq, in genuine need. Very soon, people in Palestine might be in genuine need. Are we saying that we should set up schemes for them, then?
Well, I think they should be limited. And by the way, the Syrian scheme...
But you're saying we should set up schemes.
Can I get the answer out? Can I please get the answer out? So, look, the Syrian scheme, for example, was time-limited. It ran during the Syrian civil war. It doesn't run anymore because that civil war has now ended. Look, we should obviously, for humanitarian reasons, help in some limited circumstances where we have a moral obligation to do so. But that, by the way, doesn't mean we have the UK should basically take in every single refugee in the world. We're only one country. We should do our bit, but that does not mean taking in every single refugee from everywhere in the world.
All right, those schemes don't exist. Look, one of the other points of all of this is that a lot of this...
The Ukrainian scheme and the Hong Kong scheme are still open.
Yes, but they don't. The Afghans don't, and we promised a lot of people, Afghan men who worked alongside our soldiers, we promised that we would look after them, and they're still in Afghanistan, and they're now in the hands of the Taliban.
Well, the original scheme is meant to take on 8,000 people, and we've taken in 25,000, three times more than we promised.
Well, there are reports that some of them are in the hands of the Taliban. Anyway, I just want to say, a lot of this discussion about illegal migrants, it does dehumanise human beings, and we are talking about human beings. Just want to get your reaction to an incident last night in Ireland. This is a bonfire, which at the top of this bonfire is an effigy of a boat with migrants in, with the slogan, "Stop the boats." This has now been investigated potentially as a hate crime. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think that was extremely distasteful. I don't think that sort of thing is appropriate at all for all of the obvious reasons. But it does obviously show how strongly people feel about this crisis and the fact that this year, under Keir Starmer and the Labour government, we've had more illegal migrants entering the UK than any year in history. But this kind of image is distasteful, and I certainly don't want to see this kind of thing happening.
That slogan, "Stop the boats," the last time we saw it, or the first time we saw it, was your former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, putting it in front of a podium when he addressed the nation. Is there a responsibility that your former government should hold with some of the language that you use, which is now being used by people to set fire to burning effigies on top of bonfires?
No, I don't think you can in any way draw a link between the fact Rishi Sunak very reasonably wanted to protect our borders from illegal immigration and what the people who set that fire did. It's completely unreasonable to draw a link. I think Rishi Sunak had the right objective to try and end illegal immigration into the country. In fact, in 2023, our last full year in government, we got it down by about 30%. Then Labour came in, they cancelled the Rwanda deterrent before it even started. They had this laughable gimmick they were going to smash the gangs. But what's happened? The numbers have surged. They've gone up by 40% under this Labour government. And this year so far, 2025, has been the worst in history. And this deal they announced yesterday is yet another gimmick, just like the smash the gangs gimmick, which you'll notice Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer don't mention anymore because it is so laughable. This is a gimmick they announced yesterday because only only 6% of illegal immigrants crossing the Channel will get returned to France. 94% will be allowed to stay in the UK. And obviously, if 94% of illegal immigrants crossing the Channel can stay in the UK under this new gimmick scheme that Keir Starmer has come up with, that is no deterrent. They're still going to cross. Right. If they have a 95% chance of staying, it's not going to work.
We shall see, and no doubt you'll be back on, I'm sure, with us very, very soon. We thank you for joining us, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, this morning.
Good to speak to you.